Tyrone Williams and LaToya Brown had always envisioned their honeymoon as a time of joy, adventure, and romance. After an extravagant wedding in Atlanta, they set off for Dubai, a place known for its luxury, breathtaking views, and unforgettable experiences. Their hotel suite was lavish, offering a panoramic view of the city's skyline, with golden lights reflecting off the towering buildings. Every moment felt surreal. Dining in Michelin-starred restaurants, shopping at designer boutiques, and taking sunset yacht cruises along the marina. For LaToya, this was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. She had married the love of her life, and nothing could ruin their happiness. Or so she thought. Beneath Tyrone's charming smile lay a secret, one that would soon turn their paradise into a nightmare. The morning after what was supposed to be another blissful evening, the hotel's housekeeping staff began their routine rounds. The cleaning schedule showed that Suite 1703, where Tyrone and LaToya were staying, was next. When the housekeeper knocked on the door, she received no response. She knocked again. Silence. Normally, she would have moved on, but the "Do Not Disturb" sign that had been hanging on the handle the previous day was now gone. Hotel policy required staff to wait before entering an unresponsive guest's room, so she left and returned 30 minutes later. Still nothing. Concerned, she slowly pushed the door open, expecting to find a couple still asleep or perhaps out sightseeing. But what she saw made her heart stop. The room was eerily quiet, with sunlight spilling in through the large windows. Everything seemed normal at first glance. The bed was unmade. 2 wineglasses sat on the table, and suitcases were still packed neatly. But as the housekeeper stepped further inside, she noticed something was off. The bathroom door was slightly ajar, and water pooled near the entrance. Pushing it open fully, she let out a horrified gasp. Lying motionless on the cold marble floor was Tyrone Williams. His body was twisted unnaturally, his right hand curled as if he had tried to grab something before collapsing. His temple bore a deep wound, dried blood staining the once pristine white tiles. His knuckles were bruised, his face frozen in an expression of pain. The housekeeper stumbled back, her breath shallow. She reached for the phone on the nightstand and dialed hotel security. Within minutes, sirens echoed in the distance. Dubai police arrived swiftly, sealing off the room as forensic teams began their investigation. As officers combed through the suite, they took note of several unusual details. Tyrone's wallet, phone, and passport were still there, ruling out a robbery. His suitcase remained untouched, his expensive watch still on his wrist. However, something crucial was missing: his wedding ring. Stranger still, his wife, LaToya Brown, was nowhere to be found. The bed had only one side disturbed, as if only one person had slept in it. Hotel staff confirmed that LaToya had last been seen the previous evening at the hotel's rooftop lounge. Security footage showed her entering the suite around 11 p.m., but there was no record of her leaving. Where had she gone? As police pieced together the puzzle, it became clear that the truth was far more sinister than they had anticipated. Before he became the successful man found dead in a Dubai hotel room, Tyrone Williams was just a kid from Atlanta with big dreams. Born into a hard-working family, he learned early on that success wouldn't be handed to him. His father, a truck driver, spent weeks away from home, while his mother worked grueling hours as a nurse's assistant. Tyrone was neither the smartest in school nor the most disciplined, but he had one undeniable trait: charisma. He had a way with people, a natural ability to talk his way into opportunities. In college he majored in business, not necessarily out of passion, but because he saw it as the quickest path to wealth. After graduation, he climbed the corporate ladder in finance, securing a 6-figure salary and a life filled with luxury. But with success came temptation. Tyrone enjoyed attention, and his history with women was complicated. Though he had finally settled down with LaToya, his past habits of keeping his options open had never truly disappeared. And as the investigation into his murder unfolded, detectives would soon uncover the dangerous consequences of his double life. As detectives delved into Tyrone's personal life, they discovered a name that kept coming up: Lily Carter. She wasn't just an ex. She was the woman Tyrone had never truly let go of. Even after committing to LaToya, their relationship had been tumultuous, filled with breakups and makeups. But through it all, Lily had remained convinced that Tyrone loved her. He had promised her a future, assured her that no one else mattered. But those promises had been shattered the moment she saw the engagement photos of Tyrone and LaToya on social media. He hadn't warned her, hadn't given her closure. One day, she was the love of his life. The next, she was nothing. Lily wasn't the type to sit back and let things go. She needed answers. Fueled by anger and heartbreak, she reached out to one of LaToya's friends, under the pretense of wanting to send a wedding gift. Instead, she got exactly what she was looking for, the name of the hotel where Tyrone and LaToya were honeymooning. With that information, Lily made a decision that would set everything in motion. She booked a last-minute flight to Dubai. She didn't know exactly what she would do when she saw Tyrone, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to get away with this betrayal. The afternoon that Lily arrived in Dubai, LaToya was at the rooftop pool, stretched out on a lounge chair, sipping on a cocktail and basking in the sun. The honeymoon had been perfect so far, at least in her mind. Tyrone had left earlier, saying he had an important business call to take in the suite, but she didn't think much of it. After all, he worked in finance, and business never truly stopped. But then her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Does he still tell you he loves you before bed?" LaToya frowned, her heart skipping a beat. She stared at the screen, confused. Before she could process it, another message came through, a picture. Her stomach dropped before she even opened it. And when she did, her entire world collapsed. The image was of Tyrone, sitting comfortably in a lounge with another woman. They weren't just talking. They were laughing, close, intimate. LaToya's hands started shaking as she zoomed in, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Then, a final message popped up. "Check the lobby, I'm right here." LaToya's breath caught in her throat. She didn't hesitate. Rage burned in her chest as she grabbed her bag and stormed toward the elevators. She didn't even know what she was walking into, but every step made her pulse pound harder. When the doors opened and she stepped into the grand lobby, her eyes immediately locked onto her, a woman standing tall, confident, waiting. LaToya marched straight up to Lily, her phone clenched tightly in her hand. Without thinking, she shoved the screen in her face. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded. Lily didn't flinch. Instead, she looked LaToya dead in the eyes and calmly said, "I'm the woman your husband never stopped seeing." The words hit like a slap. For a moment, LaToya just stood there, frozen. Her mind raced, trying to process the bomb that had just been dropped. But Lily wasn't finished. She told LaToya everything. The texts, the phone calls, the secret meetings. How Tyrone had kept stringing her along, making her believe she still had a place in his life. How even after the wedding, he had still been lying. Tyrone ran a hand down his face, sighing heavily. "I swear, I didn't know she was coming here. I don't know what she told you, but Stop lying to me." LaToya's chest heaved with fury. She couldn't take another excuse, another twisted attempt to manipulate the truth. She had the proof. She had the messages. And still, he was trying to deny it. Tyrone took a cautious step toward her. "You need to calm down," he said, his voice gentle. That was it. The final straw. The way he said it, like she was the problem, like she was overreacting, pushed her past the point of no return. Her eyes darted to the nightstand. Without thinking, she grabbed the heavy glass vase sitting there. Her hands trembled as she gripped it tightly. "LaToya, listen to me." She didn't. With all the pain, betrayal, and rage surging through her, she threw the vase at him with everything she had. The sound of impact was sickening. The heavy glass smashed against the side of Tyrone's head. His body staggered backward, his balance failing him. He reached out, trying to catch himself against the wall, but he was already falling. LaToya barely registered what she had done before she grabbed another object, a decorative metal tray from the table, and struck him again. This time, he crumpled to the floor, his head hitting the base of the wall with a thud. Then, silence. LaToya stood frozen, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Tyrone wasn't moving. His chest wasn't rising. A dark pool of blood began spreading beneath his head, staining the pristine white marble floor. She took a step forward, her heart pounding. But it was already too late. Tyrone Williams was dead. For a long moment, LaToya stood there, staring at what she had done. The weight of reality pressed down on her like an avalanche. Her honeymoon had just turned into a crime scene. Her hands shook as she ran them through her hair. What do I do? The first instinct was to run. But she couldn't just leave him there, not like this. LaToya shook her head in denial. You're lying, she whispered, but her voice wavered. Lily pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. Am I? She said, turning the screen toward LaToya. There they were, undeniable proof. Texts, calls, sweet words exchanged just days before the wedding. Even a message from the morning after the ceremony. Tyrone had been playing them both. LaToya felt her stomach churn. She had stood in front of her family, her friends, in a white dress, believing she was marrying the man of her dreams. And all along, he had been making a fool out of her. Lily's voice was sharp. He told me I was the love of his life. And yet, here you are. LaToya's blood boiled. Her nails dug into her palm as she clenched her fists. Without another word, she spun on her heels and stormed toward the elevators. Tyrone wasn't going to talk his way out of this. Not this time. LaToya stormed into the hotel suite, her heart pounding like a war drum. Tyrone was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware that his world was about to explode. The moment the door slammed behind her, he looked up, startled. Who the hell is Lily? LaToya's voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. Tyrone's brows furrowed, confusion flickering across his face. What? He asked, feigning ignorance. LaToya wasn't having it. She threw her phone at him, and he caught it just in time. The second his eyes landed on the screen, she saw the change. The flicker of recognition. The realization that he had been caught. You lied to me, she hissed, stepping forward, her hands clenched into fists. You played me. You stood in front of God, in front of my family, and promised me forever. And the whole time, you had her. Tyrone stood up, holding his hands out in a weak attempt to calm her. Baby, please, let's talk. Don't call me that, she snapped, her voice breaking. She's here, Tyrone, in this hotel. How stupid do you think I am? Panicked, she dragged Tyrone's body into the bathroom, his limbs heavy and lifeless. Blood smeared across the floor as she pulled him inside. The metallic scent was overpowering, making her stomach churn. She looked around the room. His wallet, phone, and passport were still on the nightstand. Nothing was stolen. This wasn't a robbery. It would be obvious that it was personal. Then another thought hit her. The wedding ring. She glanced at his hand. It was missing. A deep sense of unease crawled up her spine. She hadn't taken it. So where was it? The only thing she knew was that she couldn't stay here. Not when the walls felt like they were closing in on her. LaToya moved fast. She grabbed the hotel-issued robe she had been wearing the night before, wiped off as many fingerprints as she could, and stuffed a few essentials into her purse. She didn't pack a suitcase. That would take too long, and she didn't have time to think. At 2:47 a.m., she slipped out of the suite. She kept her head down as she walked through the quiet halls, making her way to the elevator. The security cameras would catch her, but there was nothing she could do about that now. When she reached the hotel lobby, she walked straight out the doors like nothing had happened. A cab was waiting outside, just like she had hoped. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Dubai International Airport," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The drive felt like a blur. Her mind raced through everything that had just happened. The fight. The blood. The silence. She gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles turning white. By the time she reached the airport, she already had a plan. Get on the first flight out. Get back to the US, act normal. She walked through security, her one-way ticket in hand. As she sat at the departure gate, she forced herself to breathe. In a few hours, she would be thousands of miles away, safe. She spent her days trying to rebuild, finding small jobs, attending therapy, trying to piece together the shattered remains of her life. But no matter where she went, Tyrone's ghost followed her. In the quiet moments, she still heard his voice. She still saw his face. Months passed, and slowly, she started to find her footing. She took a job at a nonprofit that helped women who had been in abusive relationships. It wasn't the high-powered legal career she once dreamed of. But it gave her purpose. One day, while working late at the office, she received an email from an unknown sender. She almost ignored it, but curiosity got the best of her. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. It was a picture, one she had seen before. A photo of Tyrone and Lily, the same one that had set everything in motion. But this time, there was a message beneath it. "Did you really think it was over?" Latoya's hands shook as she stared at the screen. Who had sent this? Lily? Someone else from Tyrone's past? She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She had spent years paying for her mistakes. But maybe, just maybe, the past wasn't done with her yet, but what she didn't know was that Tyrone's body had already been found. The hotel security had alerted the police. The Dubai authorities were fast, efficient, and relentless. And just as she thought she was in the clear, a voice cut through the airport announcement. "Latoya Brown?" She looked up, her heart stopping. A group of Dubai police officers stood in front of her. "You need to come with us to the station for questioning." She didn't fight. She didn't even ask why. As the cold metal handcuffs locked around her wrists, she simply closed her eyes, exhaled, and let them take her away. The room was eerily silent except for Latoya's unsteady breathing. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on her, suffocating, inescapable. Tyrone's body lay motionless in the bathroom, the blood pooling on the cold marble floor beneath him. The once luxurious honeymoon suite now felt like a crime scene, a place of love turned into a place of horror. Latoya took slow, shaky steps backward, her mind racing in every direction but landing nowhere. Her hands trembled as she looked down at them, stained with specks of red. She hadn't meant to kill him, she hadn't even planned to hurt him. But in that moment, in the fury and heartbreak of betrayal, she had lost control. She turned her head toward the door, her instincts screaming at her to run, to leave before someone walked in, and found her standing over her husband's lifeless body. But where would she go? What could she say? There was no excuse, no explanation that could undo what she had done. She knew the authorities in Dubai wouldn't take this lightly. The penalty for murder in the UAE was severe. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and took deep breaths, forcing herself to think. Then, slowly, she moved. She stepped over the broken glass from the shattered vase, careful not to make any more noise. She crouched down, grabbed Tyrone by the arms, and with all the strength left in her shaking body, dragged him fully into the bathroom. Her heart pounded as she maneuvered him against the base of the bathtub, making it look as though he had fallen. She stepped back and observed the scene, her mind clouded with panic and desperation. It wouldn't take long for someone to find him, housekeeping, hotel staff, maybe even Lily. A bitter laugh bubbled in her throat at the thought. Lily. The woman who had unknowingly been the final spark in the explosion that ended Tyrone's life. LaToya quickly grabbed her belongings. Her heart hammered as she picked up her purse and reached for the hotel-issued robe. The one she had been wearing the night before. She needed to leave now. She took one last look at Tyrone, whispering under her breath, "You did this to us," before slipping out of the room. The hallways were quiet as LaToya walked swiftly, keeping her head down. Every passing second felt like an eternity. She knew the hotel had security cameras. She would be seen leaving, but she had no choice. She reached the elevator and pressed the button, tapping her foot impatiently as she waited for the doors to slide open. When they finally did, she stepped inside, alone, the silence suffocating. Her fingers hovered over the buttons. Which floor? The lobby was risky. Too many eyes. Instead, she pressed the button for a lower floor, stepping out at the next stop. From there, she found a discreet staircase and made her way down to the ground level. The moment she stepped outside, the warm Dubai air hit her like a wave. It was surreal. Just hours ago, she had been in love, on her honeymoon, enjoying the luxury of a 5-star hotel. Now, she was a fugitive. She flagged down a taxi, sliding into the back seat, her fingers clutching the fabric of her robe tightly. "Dubai International Airport," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The ride was silent except for the occasional hum of traffic. She glanced out the window, watching as the city lights blurred into streaks. Her mind played the scene over and over again. The confrontation. The betrayal. The sound of the vase shattering. The look in Tyrone's eyes right before everything went black. When they reached the airport, she paid the driver and stepped out, walking quickly into the terminal. She knew she was taking a risk. Security was tight. And if the hotel had already discovered Tyrone's body, they could be looking for her. But she had to try. She approached the check-in counter, forcing a calm smile as she handed over her passport. "One-way ticket to Atlanta, please." The attendant typed something into the computer, barely glancing at her. LaToya exhaled slowly, waiting, hoping, praying. A few minutes later, she had her boarding pass in hand. She was getting out. She made her way through security, her hands clenched into fists as she moved through the crowd. Every announcement over the intercom, every passing security officer made her heartbeat quicken. But no one stopped her. No one called her name. As she reached the departure gate, she sank into a chair and let out a slow, shaky breath. She had made it. She was going home. But just as she closed her eyes, a shadow fell over her. LaToya Brown? Her heart stopped. She looked up and 2 Dubai police officers stood before her, their expressions unreadable. "You need to come with us to the station for questioning." The interrogation room was cold, the air thick with tension. LaToya sat with her arms crossed, staring at the blank walls. She had been there for hours. No sleep, no food. Just silence and the weight of what she had done. When the door opened, a detective walked in, taking a seat across from her. He studied her for a long moment before finally speaking. "Tell us what happened." LaToya took a deep breath. She could lie, try to twist the truth, but what was the point? They would find out eventually. She had nowhere to run, so instead, she told them everything. She told them about the texts, the pictures, the confrontation with Lily in the hotel lobby. She told them how she had stormed into the suite, furious, heartbroken, feeling like a fool for believing Tyrone had changed. She told them how he had stood there, lying, trying to manipulate her one last time. "I lost control," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to kill him. But I did." The detective listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sighed, leaning back in his chair. "This was a crime of passion," he said. "But it's still a crime." LaToya knew that. She had known it the moment she saw Tyrone's body on the floor. The trial was fast. The prosecution painted Latoya as a jealous wife who had snapped, unable to handle the truth of her husband's betrayal. The defense argued that she was a victim of emotional abuse, manipulated and lied to until she couldn't take it anymore. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the verdict. Guilty of manslaughter. The sentence was 15 years. Not life. Not the death penalty. But long enough for her to lose everything. As she was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, she didn't fight. She didn't cry. She had done this. She had ended Tyrone's life, and now she had to pay the price. But deep down, she knew one thing. If Tyrone had been faithful, none of this would have happened. And that was the real tragedy of it all. The prison walls were nothing like the luxurious hotel room where Latoya had last felt like herself. They were cold, lifeless, and suffocating. The Dubai women's prison wasn't the worst place in the world, but it was still a prison. Gone were the designer dresses and fine dining. Now she wore a dull beige uniform and ate food that barely had any flavor. The worst part wasn't the lack of comfort. It was the isolation. She was allowed visitors, but who would come? Her parents had been devastated when they heard the news, ashamed that their daughter, a promising lawyer with a bright future, was now a convicted criminal. Friends from back home sent letters at first, but as time passed, the letters slowed and eventually stopped. The world moved on without her. Latoya spent her days in routine, waking up at dawn, eating whatever was given, doing assigned chores, and then retreating to her small cell to read or stare at the ceiling. The other women were mostly quiet, some cold, others mildly friendly, but none willing to get too close. She wasn't like them. They saw her as the rich foreigner who had killed her husband in a crime of passion. A woman who had everything and still managed to throw it all away. At night, she thought about Tyrone. She thought about how different things could have been. Maybe if she had confronted him differently. Maybe if she had walked away instead of letting her rage consume her. But it was useless now. The past was a locked door, and she had lost the key. A year passed. Then 2. Latoya had stopped counting the days, but she hadn't stopped thinking about freedom. Every time she saw the sky through the tiny window of her cell, she imagined herself outside, breathing fresh air, walking without shackles on her wrists. Then, one afternoon, she was summoned to the warden's office. It was unusual. She had never been called before. Her heart pounded as she walked in, expecting bad news. But instead, she found a familiar face waiting for her. Her lawyer, Samuel Richards. Samuel had been handling her case since the trial, though she hadn't expected much. The court's decision had been firm, and she had resigned herself to serving her full sentence. But today, something was different. "We have a chance," Samuel said, his voice low but urgent. "The UAE has a policy of granting pardons for good behavior. We've submitted an appeal, and there's a strong possibility that you could be released early." Latoya stared at him, barely able to process his words. Hope was a dangerous thing. It made the days feel longer, the nights colder. But she couldn't help it. "How soon?" she whispered. "If everything goes well, you could be out within the next year." A year. It still felt like forever, but compared to the 15-year sentence she had been given, it was a miracle. She nodded, gripping the edge of the chair. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had a future waiting for her outside these walls. The day of her release felt surreal. After nearly 3 years, Latoya stepped out of the prison gates, blinking against the harsh Dubai sun. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into that hotel room years ago, full of anger and betrayal. She was older, wiser, and far more broken. Samuel had arranged for her to be flown back to Atlanta immediately. There was no point in staying in Dubai, not after everything that had happened. As she boarded the plane, she felt the weight of every mistake, every regret pressing down on her. She was free, but she wasn't sure she would ever truly be free of the past. The flight felt endless, but when she finally landed, she was met with another wave of reality. The city had moved on without her. The job offers were gone, her reputation tarnished. People whispered when they saw her. Some sympathized, others judged. Her parents welcomed her home, but things weren't the same. The warmth was there, but so was the unspoken tension. They loved her, but they couldn't understand her. How could they? They had never been in her shoes, never felt the kind of betrayal that had led her to that terrible moment.